Today's guest is interior designer Lindsey Walsh, and our conversation begins with a question that's about more than decorating. How does a home grow alongside the people who live in it? It's easy to think of a home as something that is finished, that one day, if we choose the right furniture and make all of the right decisions, that we will finally arrive. But the homes that we remember are rarely completed all at once. They are shaped over years by travels taken, traditions kept, objects collected, and changing seasons of family life. Before getting into design, Lindsey had a job where she traveled the world, and those experiences continue to shape how she sees beauty and the stories that our homes can tell. We discuss all of that and more. Here's my conversation with Lindsey Walsh. Welcome to Grandma's Silver, where tradition meets today. I'm Allie, your host of the Grandma Silver podcast and founder of the Grand Millennial Lifestyle. Here, we blend aesthetics with nostalgia, engaging in conversations with lifestyle brands, designers, and more to rediscover the timeless charm of the past. Join me as we journey from home to heart, illuminating the past and polishing the present with the gleam of Grandma Silver. Well, Lindsey, I'm super excited to chat with you today. This is going to be so fun. Thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. As I told you earlier, I'm a massive fan. I've been listening for the past 3 years, since I think you started.
Could you go ahead and tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do, and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. I'm Lindsey Walsh. I was raised in Dallas, Texas, lived in New York for 12 years. And I now live in a tiny historical town outside of Princeton, New Jersey, with my husband, John, and our 7-year-old son, Clark. And what I do, I'm an interior designer. I run an interior design firm called Lindsey Walsh Interior Design, and we specialize in residential design and with a focus on whole home new builds and renovations. A lot of our business is in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, but also we'll travel anywhere for a great project. We do Lake Forest, Dallas, things like that. We really try to work with our clients to create beautiful, inviting, and personal homes that are filled with joy.
Well, okay, so I have to ask because Dallas to New York is a transition. So tell me about that.
It is a transition. Well, first off, I had to get out of the heat. But the transition was made because I went to Wake Forest University in North Carolina, which was amazing. Go Deeks. There, I really fell in love with advertising, and I wanted to do it at the highest levels. And, New York was sort of the international epicenter for all of that. And so I used to be afraid of the idea of going to New York. I thought it was going to be this cold, impersonal jungle, and it turned out to be the most inspiring, exhilarating place to live. And I love that I get to go there all the time for work now.
Can we next talk about another transition, how we go from advertising to interior design? I wish people could have just seen your face.
The funny thing is it's not the most uncommon transition, right? Because so many people do interior design as a second career and think it can be really beneficial because you take so many of your, like you used to work in event planning, right?
Yeah. My career is all over the place, so I get it.
But it's the intersections that make you interesting and make you strong, right? So what you bring from that old life, can give you a competitive edge in your new life. So advertising, I went into because, that was one of those careers that were on the menu, so to speak. When you were in college, podcast host probably wasn't
Absolutely
on the menu.
Not. No one told me that I was going to use my anthropology degree to interview people in the interior design and history fields.
And yet it makes perfect sense. Same thing. I went to Wake and I was looking around at what to do. I thought I wanted to be in computer science and ride the .com bubble because I wanted to do something creative. And then I realized that advertising could be a pathway, but interior design certainly wasn't there. I went to New York. I loved it. And all throughout, interior design was a massive passion. I'd go to the beach with my mom and I'd have a stack of 10 shelter magazines back when there were 10 shelter magazines each month and just pour through them. And it was always my passion. But I loved advertising. I loved it so much. I got to work with some of the best global brands. And it took me to Seoul, Sao Paulo, Singapore, Tokyo, Shanghai, Beijing, Geneva, London, just like all over. I was managing people and, that worked out of Indonesia. And, it was wild and it was so great. And it was so stimulating. And at that time, advertising was like culturally important. People would tear out ads and put them on their walls and talk about it at the
Mhm.
water cooler back when we had water coolers. And I got to a point where I was advising the America's president of Sephora on how he should position the brand in the metaverse. And I
Okay.
was like, what am I doing? And it really helped me to realize that like what I once loved had changed and that I needed to be filled with passion again. At the time, I had bought my own house with my husband and I had bought our house and we had started to work with an interior designer, an architect, and a GC. And I realized it was the exact same process as that goes into advertising. And probably a very similar process that you had in event planning, right?
There's
Someone
a
gives
lot
you a
of
goal,
overlap between what I hear
right?
designers talk about and what I was
Yeah.
doing on the event design side.
Someone gives you a goal, they give you a budget, you learn about them, you learn about the site, right? And the context of where you need to do this work. And then you lead them through the creative process of creating a vision and then executing it and delivering it on time, on budget, and with a smile. Once I realized that, I was just like, oh my gosh, I have the ability to do, the tough part of this, like the client service project management part of it. I have the passion for it. It seems really daunting to say, I have great taste. I can design your house. And so I had a friend who I was talking about potential career changes, and she was just like, you talk about interior design all the time. You should look into that. And that's all I needed. I just needed a push. I needed someone to believe in me before I could believe in myself. And it opened the floodgates. I made a business plan. I enrolled in Parsons in their part-time post-grad interior design degree. I did that while working full-time in advertising
Wow.
with a toddler. It was so hard, but if you love it, it's worth it. And it was so important. I learned so much about drafting, color theory, space planning. As soon as people hear that you're doing interior design, like people are like, "Oh, I need help. I need help. I need help." And so my sister's best friend in Rye, her basement had flooded. Her friend hired me for a bigger project, and that went well. And her friend hired me for a bigger project, and it just kind of kept growing until I had a pipeline that was big enough to transition. I'm also really lucky that it happened at a time in work culture where I think you might have made your change around COVID. The
Yeah.
ability to not have to have the overhead of a big office. I love it. I'm so happy I made the change. I want to do it forever and I want to do it at the highest levels for my client.
When you were doing advertising, were you drawn to the visual part of it? Like, did you always kind of know you wanted to be in a visual environment? Because, I mean, if we talk about advertising, like there's copy, I mean, there's so
Mhm.
many little small subsets of advertising.
I did fine art from kindergarten through senior year of high school, like twice a week. And I've always loved the visual language of art and the idea of composition and negative space, color theory, and things like that. I had the vocabulary, but there to be an art director is a different skill set. What I loved most about it was that we were building something that it was an ideas based. And I actually had a job that a lot of people go from anthropology into, which is researching. So I was an account planner. So my job was to understand the consumer better than anybody else and report back on how you can capture their heart. What is going to make them fall in love with what you're offering and how can you be a better product and a better brand to earn their love. That's actually been a great skill. A lot of people when they hire an interior designer, I've won business because a lot of interior designers kind of give you their version. And when you get to a certain level, you can do that, right? Like people hire you if they hire Bunny Williams, they want a Bunny Williams house. A lot of people want something that deeply reflects who they are, their choices, their sensibilities. They don't have the language to speak about it. And so we do a lot of focus group kind of techniques and surveys and stuff that I would use back in advertising to really pull out the things you might not know how to say you want.
You're talking about all the places that you traveled.
Hmm.
And so I'm kind of curious if that at all, like seeing how other cultures live? Does that change your perspective at all of what home looks like or means?
Absolutely. Well, I used to go into people's homes and see where they get their shampoo and talk about shampoo in China and stuff. And one of the things that I was always most struck by is the multi-generational homes in other countries, in Brazil and in Asian countries. Parents stay, as part of their children's lives. And I love seeing how that is becoming more of an accepted practice here as people start to build ADUs and in-law wings. So that, in terms of like how to live inside your home, that is a big part of it. But then another thing is like all that travel. I would go to all these places that just felt like anywhere USA. I'd be in the middle of a conference room in Seoul, and I could have been in San Diego. I would go
Yeah.
to malls in Dubai, and you could be in Las Vegas. Like it just, the lack of provenance was glaring. And so when you would go someplace where you had a real connection to the provenance of where you are, it was electric. In Tokyo, shoji rice paper doors, right? Like that gives you
Oh.
such a sense of place. Or tiled building facades in Barrio Alto in Lisbon. Or I went to the Gritty Palace in Venice, and they have the most, and that's, Italy is sort of the where all the best marble in the world is coming from. And they had the most intricate, graphic marble floors. That gives you such a sense of place. London, Claridge's has these bright saffron yellow walls. In a place with clear light like Los Angeles, it would look ridiculous, right? But in London, in the light there, it's just perfect. And so, those moments where you just feel that sense of place so strongly, it makes me think of how can you apply that here. Right now, I'm working on a house in Bronxville, in New York, just outside the city, and they have the most beautiful homes in this area called Lawrence Park. It's from the 1890s, and they are these giant, many are kind of Tudor Victorianish houses. They have turrets. They're amazing. They have like deep dark wood paneling all inside. So we're trying to restore all of the, historical elements, but also nod to the fact that it used to be an artist colony, and really nod to that through by introducing strong color. That's a big counterpoint to all that deep dark wood, jewel tones, lots of color blocking. I just love that. Like, how can you feel like you represent where you are? A lot of designers say like you need to represent the client, the architecture, and the context, like where you are.
When traveling, there are things that perhaps you saw traveling where the area might not have necessarily been known for its wealth, but or it might have been that the country just valued modesty, or there's a lot of different reasons why something might not have been ostentatious. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you might have looked at it and said, "Oh my gosh, that's stunning." Even the simplicity of that is beautiful. So I'm curious if your travels, I mean, I do feel like taste, and this is a question too, but like, can taste be learned? But I think taste is somewhat innate. And I'm curious if in your travels, though, for someone who maybe is working on like refining some of those skills, do you feel like travel helps?
I absolutely believe an eye can be and should be cultivated. There might be something that's innate, but I think curiosity and a desire to learn wins out over, natural talent any day of the week. We live in a very myopic world. We have a very set sort of idea of what good taste looks like. There's different interpretations of it. There's your West Coast sort of Amber Lewis style. There's your sort of stark minimalism. There is sort of Southern branded James Farmer. There's Miles Red. But like a lot of it is kind of playing from the same, is in the same world, plays nicely together. And what I love so much about travel is that it breaks that mold, it breaks the thinking. It helps you to open yourself up to new ideas that you might never have considered. I never realized that you could have tile as the facade to a building like you have in Portugal. And there are very poor parts of Portugal that have beautifully tasteful Azuelo tiles covering the facades. It inspires me to think of unconventional ways that I can use tile, which is a relatively inexpensive material, right? It's not marble, it's not fine oak stained wood paneling. It's pretty cost effective, but you can just do amazingly creative things with it. And going to a country like that can really help open your mind. I think also what I love about it is you start to take the world with you and create interesting conversations between things. That's both high and low. If everything is incredibly expensive, that's bad taste. But if everything's cheap and from Pottery Barn, that's bad taste too. How do you cultivate your eye so that you're pairing things that are high and low from different provenances, from different eras that can have interesting conversations with one another, right? And I think someone like David Netto does that so well. I think Miles Red does that so well. How do you have like a French fatwa that is like Louis XVI and gilded and carved and ornate and looks super like it could just come off the set from, Marie Antoinette by Sofia Coppola, right? And pair that with like a very humble Indian durry. That's something that's casual, something with a rough textured feel to it, something with bright, bold patterns that are more blunt and less fine. And that's where I think the interesting personal taste comes in is when you expose yourself to everything and then you start mixing it with a sense of what's high, what's low, what's in this culture and that culture, and how do you mix them in interesting ways. And what's so great about being American is that we are a country of multitude of cultures. And so something that's inherently American design is borrowing from a number of cultures and feels very much at home, back to the conversation about provenance, in any American house. Is that helpful?
It is, absolutely. And you're kind of touching on something which you and I were going to potentially explore a little bit today, which is sort of personal evolution of a space.
Mm-hmm.
And this always is really interesting to me because one of the beautiful things about working with someone like you is that a lot of people have those interests and they don't know how to bring something together in one space because
Mm-hmm.
it can very easily feel very cluttered, messy, not cohesive. The other challenge here is this concept of evolution of what started. I mean, I'm a good example of this, right? I have a 9-month-old. What worked for
Mm-hmm.
me literally last year is not working for me in the next couple of months when he's on the move. You have these different seasons of life. Let's open that conversation up a little bit more.
So I'm a big fan of the phrase form follows function. I am currently working on an apartment house on the Upper East Side of Manhattan for one of my very best friends in the world. She has two girls that are a tween and a teenager. One's going to boarding school next year, and the next one's going to be in boarding school in a couple of years. And so, you know, we're redoing everything with an eye towards what do you do in the now and what do you do in 5 years when this is a completely different the space has a completely different kind of function. She also has a bunch of furniture, antique furniture from her family, which is Charleston based and Winter Park, Florida based, and her husband's family, which all came from their apartment on Central Park South. The question is, how do you take your past and start to make roots and put it together in such a way that it's functional now and aesthetically appealing now, but then functional and aesthetically appealing the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. You have to have an amazing space plan where you can think of multiple uses for a space that can evolve over time. And so you're not thinking specifically about the pieces that you have. You think about what you need and how it will serve over time. I think about like a lot of clients when they have like small kids, you want really comfortable dining chairs, upholstered back dining chairs. So when the kids get older, they can do their homework in the dining room. So you start planning for what are all the multiple uses that can happen over the life cycle of this family. And how do you organize a house around it? If I was rebuilding my house right now, I would want to put in a first floor room with an ensuite bathroom so that one day it could be a primary bedroom because I'm going out of this house feet first. I've worked on this too hard to leave it. So I think it's a great floor plan that is planned for multiple uses. And then you start to look at your inventory of what you have and you start to place things in ways that it's the right dimension, it's the right functionality for the space. And then you start to think through what you still need. Then you start to layer in the palette on top of that and start to think of how can I reupholster things? How can I do the wallpaper or the paint and window treatments and rugs and carpet and bring it together in a scheme that makes these disparate pieces for these disparate functions start to feel like it's a comprehensive, cohesive thought that is still has some interesting tensions inside of it. If you're bringing a lot of old pieces that are completely different forms, you then might want your scheme to be a little bit more cohesive. Mm-hmm. If you're bringing a lot of furniture that is like sets of furniture, like a dining room set, you might want to start breaking things up. Paint your chairs chippy white and keep the dining table in a dark brown finish that it came with. Over time, you should have the functionality you need in a way that feels cohesive that you can then add to. A lot of things that I think are great to continue to add to over time, so that you can get that finished house. The thing that makes it feel finished, I think, is the layering. Yeah. And that's something you can continue to do forever. I mean, you probably need to edit too. There are some overly layered houses. If you're going to London to the silver vaults, you can bring back a silver toast rack that you can put on your desk and use for envelopes. You can bring back a silver letter opener. When you go to Japan, you can bring back like a rice paper pendant or something like that. You can still keep building and making it part of your story. But if you've built in the function with an eye towards the next 30 years in your floor plan from the beginning, then that will support you as you go.
How much of the future is part of your conversations with people?
So it's a client-led business. So I can guide and I can suggest, but at the end of the day, it depends on who they are and how they want to live. Yeah. I have one client who's living in her house for the next 6 to 7 years, and then they're going to sell. They want to do something new. She is letting her daughters sort of dictate their room design. It is very much what a young girl wants in 2026. We're just servicing that because that's what they want. In other cases, I do have clients that want, this is their forever home. They want to know, how can this transition from being my daughter's room to a guest room and still be something that can accommodate her when she comes home, where she feels like it's her, but not be so off-putting. And my clients are also great at thinking through this. When I was doing a workshop with the Upper East Side client, the husband kept talking about the importance of having some brown furniture in the girls' rooms. You think of kids' rooms and you think of white.
Which is so funny because kids are like the last subset of humans that should have anything white.
100%. A Georgian chest you can buy for maybe at the end of the day, $1,500, $2,000. That's not too different from the cost of buying something at retail, and it's going to last you for the next 30 years.
In what other ways has your home evolved?
My son's room, we didn't invest a lot of money into it. We started with our public rooms. Like I'm in the dining room right now. When a kid comes home, they seem like they're going to be like that forever. And then all of a sudden you realize how quickly this person grows. And so I'm right now in the process of doing a bathroom that's serving as my son's bathroom. But we live in a small house, so it's also the guest bathroom. See all of these really cute bathrooms on Instagram where you have, cutesy little kiddo wallpaper with like alligators or sharks or something like that. And he's 7. And I was just like, I don't know that this is gonna last. Now, if you love it, go for it. That's a lot easier to change than tile or plumbing fixtures. So what we aligned on was having really classic sort of a white Bianco Dolomite marble penny tile floor and subway tile, because that's classic. That can be great for a kid. It can be great for an adult. We're going to have a pop of color in a blue vanity and a blue cladding, which is the wood that goes on the side of an alcove tub. A marble top that's honed that I think will make it look elegant when it's a guest room. This is also the only bathtub in the house, and I take baths every day. I love baths, and so I want it to feel like a luxurious bath.
Yeah.
So I need a marble tub deck. So we have that. But then we're also thinking about things like, okay, well, who are the guests going to be? My parents are in their mid to late 90s. My dad's turning 80 in January. They need a grab bar. right? So and also my niece has cerebral palsy, and she's a smart, awesome cookie. But she needs sometimes, like physically, she could use a grab bar too. So we put in grab bars. We made sure all of the tile was honed instead of polished, so it was more slip resistant. Oh, I forgot the biggest part of it all. I asked my son what colors he wanted, and he said he wanted Giants and 76ers colors. So it's red and blue. So that's a great way to make sure that it's timeless, right? Make sure that it's something that they have a say in. What do you want it to be like? But then, like, I'm choosing a venison fabric that has a very small floral design that's red and blue. So it's his colors, but it will be something that will live nicely and translate
Yeah.
over time.
You've touched on a couple of times different, maybe antiques. In your mind, what makes an object meaningful?
It just has to spark joy in you. It could be, something that your kid made, something that was a wedding gift. My mom's a needlepoint person, and she made coasters, and every year she makes us different Christmas ornaments.
Okay, so going off of object a little bit, I don't know how much of like museums and architecture you really got to appreciate when you were traveling, because I know also like a work trip is a work trip and sometimes it's
Hmm.
hard to squeeze those things in. But if there are things where you've seen collections or inspiration that you feel like have influenced interiors, not even necessarily like your interior, it could be your interiors where you were like, oh my gosh, I love this. I need to like be able to translate
Yeah.
this somewhere. Or even if a client comes to you and says, like, we took this trip and this was so special to us, we need to like put some level of influence of this.
One of the ways that I try to really unpack a person's visual language that they might not be able to articulate is I find out, where are your favorite places to travel? What's your favorite music? What's your favorite museum? The house in Bronxville, the wife, she loved Italian pop music, and she loved like going to Italy, and she had studied abroad there, I think. There really felt like there was a contemporary Italian kind of vibe coming across. And so I did a lot of mining in colors and forms for seating and upholstery, and like interesting shaped chairs and items that would be reminiscent of, say, a mid-century Italian piece. And she really responded to it. And so, a lot of it comes in the information gathering, and it kind of it can lead you to a place. I like to do a workshop where I can take these things, and maybe it doesn't resonate. Maybe you might have lived in Italy, but you just want an English farmhouse. You put it out there as an offering. If they spark to it during the workshop, great. And if they don't, fine. But one of the things, to your earlier question about bringing it back into the home and like the idea of museums, you're right that I didn't get to go to museums when I was traveling
I
for
figured,
work,
yeah.
sadly. But I now try to go to house museums whenever I can. And I mean, the funny thing is, my favorite house museum is Winterthur. It's incredible, right?
Amazing. And it's like different every time. You never have the same experience twice.
Yeah, and what I love about going to an old house museum, whether it's here or in Portugal or Spain or wherever you are, is that it inspires me to be so much braver and bolder than what I typically see in front of me. The Chinese parlor at Winterthur is just
That's
bonkers.
the curved.
The one that has the all of the sort of chinoiserie motif murals with lots of hills and sort
Yeah.
of structures, and then it's all punctuated with like lemon yellow upholstery,
Yeah.
and then there's a massive crystal chandelier, and the window treatments are pelmet. The pelmets are sculptural. Like you walk in there and you're like, ah, this is where Miles Red gets it,
Yeah.
like. And it's like, why do I always need to be doing like a basic pinch pleat drapery on a French return rod, or doing the bamboo shade under? Like, it's great, it's beautiful, it works, but it really, these places inspire me to just break the box, and just because people just went for it so much more, I think, than they feel like they have permission to do now. It's not at all practical for daily living, right? Like,
No, yeah.
your kid, my kid, like watching TV, like these look like incredibly uncomfortable chairs.
Right.
But you could take that idea, and like, people, it just breaks my heart when I see people getting so many white sofas and beige sofas First off, it's going to show a ton of stains, but there's this feeling like a sofa is a major investment, so I need to get something neutral, and then I can plus it up with, fun pillows. Looking at this, like why not upholster it in a lemon yellow, right?
Right.
And just give yourself permission to do something completely out of the ordinary because it makes such a strong visual impact. Because, you are taking one of the spots in the room with the most surface area that can, take up a good chunk of visual space and act as an amazing counterpoint to this incredibly strong wallpaper story that you have going on.
You're kind of calling something out, which I think would be good to touch on for a second. Speaking of, we were just talking about evolution of a home in our lives. Do you feel like that sometimes limits people to take those design risks because they tell themselves like this isn't the season. Like there will always be like a this isn't the season. Because you walk into a space like a winter and you see these beautiful rooms and you're like, wow, one day maybe I could have a space like this. But why not make one like take a space like that, and not maybe be so literal with it?
You can absolutely do everything now. You can and should have nice things now, but you can also do it in a way that supports your life now. Leather is so durable, but you can get it in incredibly bright, vibrant, interesting colors. That's a way of bringing in, to your upholstery, something that is not boring, makes a statement, but can stand up and live with you. I'm a big fan of if you are in the stage of your life where you have a young family and a dog and everything is mayhem, your stage, honestly, you need the most pattern saturated sofa you can possibly get. And everybody's out buying white or beige or navy, right?
Yeah.
But something that feels like a risk, like I can't have it until later, is actually the complete inverse because it's going to last so much longer. Because when you spill, my kid like lives for like PB&J, so we have jelly everywhere, right? Everywhere. And then it's punctuated by my red wine and then my dog's like visits. If it's on something like a Persian carpet, you have no idea where anything is. But if
Yeah.
it's on a cheap sisal, which everybody says go get one, you're going to see it. I'm a big fan of leaning into, if you're in that stage of life, leaning into the patterns, the colors, which might seem counterintuitive because it's actually what's going to be most supportive to your life stage and last the longest. And also, I think antiques tend to be made with so much more integrity, so much more structural integrity, the joinery, right?
Yeah.
You'll see that a lot of times, like the on First Dibs or Cherish, they'll show the joints and
Mm.
how they're, how they come together. I was just moving some shelves that were IKEA from my office. They all fell apart. Get the antique that's going to last
Yep.
and live with it. And what I love about getting an antique that already has some patina, a few scratches, maybe missing a key, is that if your kid or your dog or you like knock it, it's not like you are taking a priceless, timeless antique from the Delaware Antique Show or the Philadelphia Antique Show
Yeah.
and, ruining the value by $10,000. It's just part of the story. Someone did that to it 50 years ago. Someone did it to 100 years ago. Some will do it in another 50 years. It's designed to survive better than something that is manufactured today that has like peg joints.
You're familiar with the podcast, so I talk about legacy a lot. So one of the things that I'm curious is what you hope that someone's home, when someone else walks into it, not only what that person is getting, but like what someone gets out of their own home when they look around. Like, what do you want it to say about them?
I want it to be inviting to use over and over and over again and speak to all the different ways that they could fill their time and in ways that are joyful. There's what it says about you, which is important. I layered in small parts in my family living room. Like there's a nod to, there's a Gough painting, there's a historical black and white photograph of the 1920 something US lacrosse team. There's a map of Ireland. There's like little nods to the things that my husband loves. But more importantly, what I want it to say to someone who lives there is I want it to inspire use in ways that fill you with joy. For my living room, I made sure that there was sofas where you could lie down and read a book, watch a movie, watch TV, but a cocktail bar so you could receive guests and chat, or my husband and I could talk at the end of the day and catch up. There is a game table so that we could have puzzles or mahjong. But the way that we actually use it is we use it as an office. We do our work at that table and we use it for dinner. Like in the winter, I love eating in front of a wood burning fireplace, and it's just magic. We have our Christmas tree in there. There's a space for that. So making sure that like the room, you look at the room and you're like, I could have a fire. I could do a puzzle. I could, do some work. I could have dinner. I could watch TV. I could have a cocktail, right? Like seeing the potential uses and making sure someone gets the max utility and joy out of each room, I think is what I hope that people see. I want you to look in your kitchen and be inspired to cook things that you love and to have a place for your kids to do homework and a place to catch up with your friend. A kitchen shouldn't just be a kitchen. A bedroom shouldn't just be a bedroom. A bathroom shouldn't just be a bathroom. They need to inspire you with multiple uses so that you're getting the most that you possibly can out of a space.
I want to go ahead and give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find you. I will preface this by saying that I will put all of your answers in our show notes so that people, if they are not able to write it, if they're in their car right now and they're like, oh no, I can't write that down, it'll be there for you to go find, but I'll give you the chance to share that with everyone.
Well, Allie, when I was coming up with my firm's name, I decided to choose the longest name that you can possibly fit on an LLC formation paper. I can be found at Lindsey Walsh Interior Design. Lindsey's with an E, so Lindsey, Walsh Interior Design. I can be found at the same name on my website, www.lindsey-walsh-interior-design. And call me, 917-328-4502. Let's chat.
I love it. Like I said, I'll put all of that in the show notes. We'll make it easy for everyone to find you. But thank you so much for being here. This was so fun to finally connect, and I am sure our paths will cross again soon.
Allie, it was the best hour, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for this, and thank you for all the great content that you put out to inspire all of us. I love it, and I can't wait to hear what's next.
Thanks.